I got the last video short, so I'll just pick up from where I left last time. And we were talking about not Kant, Descartes' thinking self, and some of the logical outcomes of his claim that I think is absolutely certain. So it's absolutely certain. And that means that absolutely true. That means error comes from outside the self, thinking self. So this is another way of saying, as I was trying to say at the end in the last video, that I think is basically infallible on its own. So cut from everything else, seen as it is in itself, this self can't commit any error. So that's why we are starting with I think. That was precisely the point. That's why we are starting with I think, because it is free from error. And it is free from doubt as well. So I think is infallible. And from infallible, we get infallible foundations. And now the only task left, and obviously it will be proven to be a huge task, to build from this foundation a new edifice. And to build, so the foundation is absolutely certain. But in order to build the edifice, we would have to interact with things outside this I think. And that's where error and doubt and everything would be reintroduced, but at least we would have foundations which are solid. And foundation are solid, we can get as close to truth or as close to error-free system of knowledge as possible. So this is going a bit ahead of ourselves, but just to go back to I think. So I think is infallible in that sense. Now, so thinking is infallible on its own. And by thinking, Descartes means something broader than we understand by thinking. He mean anything which this I does, this I which is completely isolated from body, brain, and anything external worlds. So there are no senses, so there's no body, so there are no senses. So we should understand this, I think, in an abstraction, in a way, in a negative uh, sense first. So what it is not. So it is not any function of body. So it is not senses. It is not any function of brain. So I think is anything other than that. And what this I was doing was doubting. So that can be, so doubting is a part of thinking. Thinking can also be willing, as long as we don't understand it in any bodily sense. Thinking can also be perception. And things like that. And general other things which we mean by thinking, reason, etc. So, and the direct object of this thinking is called idea by Kant. That's what Descartes. That's what he means by idea. So idea for him is an immediate object of thinking. In other words, the content of thinking is ideas. So, just to give an example, if I'm thinking about a horse, obviously there's no external world at the moment, so there are no external horses, but just to give an example, if I'm talking about a horse, so what my mind is, the object of my mind is not the actual horse in the external world, if it existed. On the other hand, horse is actually a concept or an idea, which is as a concept or as an idea, which is the immediate object of my mind. So, and that when he reestablishes the external world, this gap between the idea which I think and the external world becomes really problematic for Descartes and his followers, whether they are rationalist followers or empiricist followers. So the idea is any immediate or direct object of mind is called idea. And at the moment, there's no external world. So if there are ideas, they are all coming from within the mind itself. Mind, or I think. Mind itself. And sometimes this fact that they are within mind, they are not coming from outside, is called innate. So they are inborn, innate ideas. And this will become a huge talking point among different camps of Cartesian, and we will come back to it. So this, I think, left to its own, has these ideas, and some of these ideas are innate ideas. That is, they are found in this thinking thing, or this I think, without access to anything external. So they are self generated concepts. Hence, okay, so these are innate ideas, and these innate ideas or innate things in the mind can be either actual concepts or they can also be powers of minds, that is, certain potentialities. So, and Descartes seemed to have both of these things in mind, or potential powers or power of mind. So I have certain concepts which are generated by this I think, or my mind, even if it is cut off from everything else. And there are certain powers of this mind. For example, the power to innate ideas. So that can be concepts generating from mind or powers of mind. And among other powers, there are two types of powers of mind in Descartes. One is intuition, so power to see or perceive things directly. So if there was an intelligible world outside, the mind would be able to see that world. So our eye sees the external world. In a sense, mind has its own eye. The only thing is that eye of the mind is totally rational eye, devoid of any body. So whatever it sees is there's no possibility of error unless it is interacting with something other than itself. So the power to see, and that's how the mind can get its content. And the other power he talks about is that of inference, and one of the main type of inference which he emphasizes at this point is deduction. So intuitions, in a sense, give you information, and from information the mind can deduce other things, other knowledge. Okay, so the mind has innate ideas. The mind has innate powers. Power of deduction. Generally the power of inference. And more importantly, before that, mind also has a power to intuit. So see things which are intelligible and see things which are intelligible, and that provides the content. So content is provided here, 1 and 2, and these powers then use that content to deduce further knowledge and build upon those concepts and ideas which provide mind with the content. So important thing here is that mind for Descartes both provide the content and it was also the organizing power. So it provides you both the information, but it also then categorize that information, organize that information, draw inferences from that information, and so on. And the ideas, the first idea Descartes had thought he had, even when he had cut off his mind from everything else, was the idea of God. And he said that the idea of God couldn't have come from the external world anyway, because the idea of God, he finds himself in his mind, is the idea of perfection. So, and since there's no external world anyway, so at the moment, so it couldn't have come from the external world, and it couldn't have come from my thing, because even though my thinking is infallible, I am not perfect, because at least I have the sense of imperfection, which is error. And that's why I undertook the whole exercise anyways. But the God is pure perfection, so it couldn't have originated from me either. So that's how he reestablishes the concept of God. So the idea of God is found within me, but it couldn't have come from within me, because I'm imperfect and the idea I have is perfect. So therefore the idea of God must have come from God himself, and based on that there are certain uses of the idea of God at this point in his investigation, to which we don't need to discuss it for our present purpose. But what I want to say at this point is the ideas are certain and error-free as long as they are not interacting with anything other than my mind. And so any idea which comes from my mind alone, sometimes we calls it attentive mind, are certain and true. And his conception of certainty is that of truth and devoid of error, because error comes from outside, I think. And this would be important for when he reestablished the connection with the external world. Ideas coming from my mind, my attentive mind, are true and free from error. And two distinctive properties or signs of such ideas are that they are clear, because they are the product of an attentive mind, and they are distinct. So ideas, as long as they are clear and distinct, they are true and they are free from error. And the ideas which are not clear and distinct, they either didn't come from I think, or even if they came from I think, they were mixed with other things. That is, once we have reestablished our body and external world, they must be coming from our body or from the external world. So what actually makes our knowledge less certain and less true or false must be our sense experience. Even though once we have reestablished the external world, we will see that sense experience or senses are important for information about the external world and about our body, but they give us we need is the attention of mind in order to get reliable knowledge from senses. So just to go back to and sum up Descartes here, through radical doubt as a method, he doubted everything which could be doubted, and he was able to doubt our body, including brain. He's able to doubt the external world. He's able to doubt all the perception, and we are left with I think. We can't doubt I think, because if we doubt I think, then there's no doubt left either. So this provides us the absolute anchor through which we start rebuilding our knowledge. And this, I think, is a thinking thing, and it has the power to intuit, to provide us content as well as organization. So the power of intuition and the power of deduction, and if this is absolute certainty, then anything falling from it would be absolutely certain as well. So one thing we find in this, I think, is the idea of God. And there are other two ideas we found, the idea of mind and the idea of body as extension, and its essence is extension, and its essence is thinking. And these are all the ideas of this, I think. So they must exist as well. So then we reestablish body, we reestablish mind, and we also reestablish external world, because external world is extension as well. And the sources of error, although we need sense experience, senses for the information about the external world in its extension, because extension is the property of body, and mind is something which is pure thinking without extension. So mind probably can't give us any information about extension. So we do need senses, but senses provide us hazy and less reliable knowledge. So that information coming from senses must go through the criteria or through the judgment of how I think, and that judgment consists of two things. As long as the mind is attentive, and as long as our ideas are clear and distinct, they are true. So the information provided by senses is judged by, I think, through the criteria of clarity and the criterion of distinctness. And that's how I start rebuilding this edifice. So this is a very rough sketch. And as I said, Descartes follows then after his death, or even divided into two camps, rationalists and empiricists. So next time we'll look at first rationalists, then empiricists, and then we'll see how Kant tries to reconcile these opposing camps of Cartesianism and give us a new synthesis. So probably we'll need a couple of videos for that, and then we can go back to Iqbal's text. Okay, thank you.